Cool. All right. Hello and welcome to our first interview, chat, whatever. I don't know what these are, but I'm Noah Bradley and I'm here with Darren Yeow.
Hey,
and we're down here in Australia, and we're going to be talking about art and the Nomad and art camp and lots of other cool stuff, and it should be a really good talk.
Yeah, and welcome back to Australia.
Yeah,
as well.
It's good to be back here. It's still warm here. I'm dreading the winter, but yeah, hopefully it won't be too bad.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go ahead and dive in. Your Kickstarter is fully funded.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's been maybe 4 days now.
Yeah,
and I think we're sitting close to 70,000, and it's gone way beyond what I kind of expected.
Yeah,
I thought, wow, that's pretty crazy how quickly it funded.
Yeah.
So
because it was fully funded within 20 hours, something like that.
Yeah, probably less than that actually. Yeah, I think for the first 30,000, which was the original goal, that was probably I don't know, just a handful of hours. To be honest. Yeah,
it's crazy.
It was pretty nuts. So
I just think you were worried about it getting funded.
I know, I know, but still, as I've always said to you, it's your baby, so you're so close to it. Yeah. I mean, for me anyway, I'm so close to it that I didn't know it was any good or not.
Yeah.
I'm just like this close.
Yeah.
So it was nice that a lot of people said it would be fun than that, but still, you don't know until you press the button.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing when you actually ask people for money. That step is huge.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure it's exactly the same with with art camp and everything like that, and even going before that with art freelancing.
Yep. I had this idea in mind, but until you actually ask people to pay money to sign up, you don't really know how many people are interested.
Yeah, I mean, you have a gut feeling. I think, you have a gut feeling, but that could be skewed.
Yeah, so a lot of people are wrong about that too.
Yeah,
you charge for something that no one's ever going to pay for.
Yeah,
so a lot of people put time into things that just die.
Absolutely, and I think very early on, I was like, what happens if I one of these people that has put a lot of time into something that just it's not going anywhere. And I think for me, and I'm not sure if you did something similar. I think I remember we talked about this, but meeting up with people that have already done what I was looking to do, that was very reassuring. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was the Orbit Key guys. They're fantastic dudes, and they've been really forthcoming in all the information and everything, because they are still Victoria in Melbourne. They're still the most funded project on Kickstarter, and they've been just amazing with their knowledge and everything like that. And I think it's just reaching out and getting in touch with those people has been really, really useful, and chatting and bouncing ideas off people like yourself as well has been really, really cool.
Yeah, so it's so useful having that. So I think people would be interested in hearing sort of the history of the Nomad.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
How did it even get started?
Yeah.
How did you were you sitting there one day and just like, I'm gonna make a bag?
Sorry, just a disclaimer before we go on. My child's just out of the camera, and if you hear any weird noises, Jax is in the background.
He's super adorable and staring at us right now.
Hello.
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know me, I'm a concept artist / illustrator. So sketching is a very big part of what I do and what Noah does as well. We're always sketching, and what I found was that because I've always been in a lot of studio environments and even working from home a lot, I don't get to go out of the house all that much, and I get stuck behind the internet, Google image search and that. And to a degree you kind of need to do that because it makes things a lot more efficient. You can get things done a lot quicker. But I think that there's a lot to be said for going out into the real world and getting your inspiration from the source as well.
Definitely.
There's only so much you can get from a static picture. And being able to move around and see how the light affects things at different times of the day, that's, for me anyway, I've always learned so much from that. It's always been fascinating just watching the way the sun moves across the sky and how that affects different, bounce lights and all that sort of thing. So I try to get out more and sketch, and probably more than a year now ago, I was doing a lot of outdoor sketching, and I found it was really a big pain in the butt. I mean, it was just cumbersome. I have a nice sort of satchel similar to that one there, but it's really just a sack. Where you oh, Baba. And you have to take the book out, and then you have to take your stuff out, and it can get really cumbersome. You drop stuff everywhere, and it's a bit of a pain in the butt. So I started looking for a sketchbook holder or some sort of satchel where it could actually hold the book in there and all this stuff around it. And I couldn't find anything.
Right.
And I thought, it's got to exist, right? I mean, it seems like something so simple. But I looked for months and there was nothing on there. On the internet. So I thought, maybe I'll create something. It doesn't seem like that big a thing, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, I'll just go create a bag. And from there I started taking it one step at a time, trying to get a prototype done, trying to find the right manufacturers. And that took a lot longer than I expected, because I thought it was going to be quite a simple product. And it's more than a year later before we got to Kickstarter, and it also cost significantly more money than I thought it would. So that's kind of like the journey in a nutshell, I suppose. And over that time I've also been kind of teasing people with the concepts as I've been getting bits and pieces of the prototype back. And actually that's one of the more interesting things, putting out those simple concepts and people really responding to it. That was the first time that I thought maybe this idea actually has legs. Because I thought maybe a couple of people will be interested in getting one of these as well. You never quite really know, until you kind of put it out there, and then it's like, wow. I think for the first picture, just showing the internal boards and just showing its flexibility, people were like, wow, that's really cool. And there were like 600 likes and a ton of shares, and I thought, maybe there's something to this.
I think that's an important thing just in general. Cute baby. Just in general, because I think validating your idea like that is something important. I think a lot of people miss out on that, because we develop this stuff like in isolation, and really we have to make sure that someone actually wants this stuff. Someone's actually going to buy this stuff, and that's why I think like getting it out there, showing it to people, really proving the idea is really important as you kind of go through the process.
But it's kind of counterintuitive, or it's not something that a lot of creatives are very comfortable with. For me personally, with artwork, I love to just sit in my room by myself, not show anyone anything until it's done, or at least to a very polished stage, and then kind of release it. But with the bag, I thought, let's get in early, let's see what people think. And for me, that was very scary. No one likes to sort of show half-assed work, and then everyone goes, that's a piece of crap, and people make value judgments on it. But for some reason, the early concepts of the Nomad were very well received. So I'm not sure, did you do something similar with with Art Camp?
I guess I can talk about the beginnings of that too. I still remember coming up with the idea. I think I was walking around like a mall one day or something like that, and I had this thought that art students do a lot of work when they're in art school during the semesters. They're working hard, they're taking their classes, but then they always have this summer where usually they didn't ever do anything. I talked to my classmates about like what they did over the summer, and most of it did not involve art of any kind. And so like their skills just sort of like flatlined during the summers. And I was thinking about that. I was like, that's a lot of time that they're not spending on their art. And there's not really anything to fill that gap. They they don't really have the structure to keep improving. And so I had this idea of like, all right, you've got give or take 3 months during the summers to work on your art if you want to. And so I thought I'd put together this little 12-week course, and mainly just to develop some fundamental skills, teach people to really practice like every day and improve their work. And so that's really the basis that I've built this idea around. And the beginning was very humble. Basically all I did was I wrote up a curriculum of what I thought were like the best basic fundamental exercises you could do that would apply to everyone. And so I wrote up that list. I put together a little webpage and put a PayPal button on it and sent it out to some people that some subscribers on my mailing list just to see if anyone was interested. And it was kind of terrifying because I didn't know if anyone would be interested. And lo and behold, first day I got like a pile of signups.
Yep.
And people loved it,
Yep.
and they were interested, and they signed up for it. And from that point on, I was like, all right, this is a good idea. People like this, people need this,
Yep.
and I can really make this happen. And that's actually when I started producing it.
Yep.
Before then, I actually produced no content. There was nothing behind Art Camp.
I suppose if you'd done it and no one responded, you'd be like, oh, it's
Right.
a bit of a
I
waste.
didn't want to do that. Like, I didn't want to put in like whatever it was, 24 hours worth of demos without a single sign up. That would have scared the living daylights out of me.
Yeah, and it would have been pointless as well.
Exactly.
Because I think that doing that marketing and make sure that need is there before you put in all this extra effort is kind of like the right way to do things.
Yeah,
you know?
And that's why I did it. Like, I only sent it to a certain part of my mailing list too, just a select few people, just to make sure that people would be interested in this. Because I figured if, like, I got 2 signups or something like that, I could just refund their money, close the webpage, never announce it.
That's really interesting. I mean,
Idea would die.
That's kind of like a very risk mitigated approach,
Right.
To do that, which I think it's really clever.
Because like I didn't want to put out a shoddy product. I didn't want something that was just going to fail, or I wasn't going to get anybody to sign up for it. I was going to have to really struggle to get anyone to sign up for it.
And I think that's what a lot of people do. It's like they work. They put in a ton of work, and then they release it right at the end with no fanfare before, no marketing, and it flops, and it's really demoralizing. I think.
Oh, it's terrible. So I'm pretty happy with the way I started that thing out.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about marketing and how you've marketed the Nomad so far, because you've done a lot leading up to the Kickstarter. People see like the Kickstarter, and if, for instance, that's their first time seeing you, they're like, "Oh my god, it got funded in less than 24 hours." That's like overnight success. People love that idea of like overnight success, but really, you put in tons of time ahead of the Kickstarter.
Absolutely,
like a ton. Not just, I mean, obviously in developing the product, you have to put in countless hours of that, but also in like developing a fan base, developing interest in that. So maybe talk a little bit about how you've done that.
Absolutely.
That's all right.
All right. Okay. So sorry about that. There was a technical issue. We're just working with some new equipment and stuff, so just still getting used to it. Okay, so what was that question? The question was the lead up, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So the question I'm coming back to is before the Kickstarter launch, it might seem to a lot of people that perhaps don't know me that it was an overnight success, but there was a ton of work that went into the marketing and building relationships up. That happened way beyond, pressing launch and Kickstarter. And a lot of it started quite naturally, and it was nothing to do with any monetization of anything as well. It was just wanting to be part of the artist community and give back a little bit. So I used to have a blog online, and I used to post to Facebook, and I found that the vast majority, like 99% of people would come from Facebook to go read my blog. So the thing was, well, why not just take away that extra step and just blog on Facebook? And a lot of people do it these days, but it never used to be like that. I think, social media conventions tend to be short and sweet posts. And I was posting things that were really long. I was telling Noah that, I'd copy and paste something from Facebook and put it into a Word document. It's like 10 pages long. Just ridiculous, right? But that started to really connect me with a lot of other artists who read the entire thing and be like, hey, this guy's got really decent thoughts. And so that's been happening for the last 4 years or so. And that's how we connected, in a lot of ways as well, because I also like to post a lot of resources for artists. Noah's Art of Freelancing that came out one day, and I thought I listened to the first, was it an hour or half an hour?
Half an hour.
First half an hour, and I thought, this is really good information that people could really, use. And I shared it, and Noah got in touch with me, and we started taking it from there. And this was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah,
probably a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a while back.
Yeah, so that's just one example of connecting, and then it's just connected in the real world as well. So I think that's a big part of why the Kickstarter funded so quickly, is because I've been developing a lot of these relationships over the last 4 years. I never intended to, I didn't have any intentions to create a product and create money from that. But I think that connection with people and giving them information has built up a lot of goodwill. It was just an unconscious thing, and these people have wanted to help me back in return, and the response has been phenomenal.
I think that's a really important thing, because a lot of people hear like networking and marketing and stuff like that, and they think it's this like weird foreign concept. But when you really get down to it, some of the best networking and marketing you can do is just talking to people, connecting with people, being nice to people, helping people. It's really what it's about. Because I mean, like, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I built a fan base over the years, not so that I could like make money off of them. I'm not trying to like sap every dollar out of them. I did it because I like connecting with fans, and I like talking with them, helping them, writing articles for them, sharing videos with them. I've always really enjoyed that stuff. And yes, it just so happens that doing all of that has built a huge loyal fan base, and now that when I do these cool projects that I have in mind, I've got backers for it, but that's not what I ever had in mind to begin with. I was doing it to help people, to connect with people. And you're the exact same way. You did all that like blogging and writing and stuff. And I remember like adding you as a friend because I'd see some of my other friends on Facebook sharing your status, and I was like, wow, this guy's writing some really good stuff. I should definitely friend him. And then like, you start following your work, and then all of a sudden you start hearing that you're coming up with a nice cool product, and then you're like, oh wow, this cool guy's coming up with a cool product, I'd like to support it. And then then your Kickstarter gets funded in 24 hours. So
that's pretty nice.
It really makes sense. You don't need to. It's not all about like paid advertising and like doing these big marketing pushes.
I actually haven't paid. I haven't paid for any advertising at all. Like not a single dime. Well, partly because I read on Facebook the Facebook marketing was a bit dodgy, so I don't know if I really trust that all that much. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I just thought, well, I just want to see how it goes, just organically first, and it's turned out to be pretty good. So
I mean, I've messed around with paid advertising, not because I needed it or was like really trying. I just wanted to play around with it. And honestly, it doesn't work nearly as well as connecting with people. Actually talking with people.
Well, I don't know, with the approach of the actually with showing people the concepts of the Nomad, that happened probably 6 months or something beforehand. Just very, very simple concepts, and people really liked that. And actually, as it started to count down, people were private messaging me quite a lot behind the scenes, saying, has it started yet? People were really ravenous, just going, has it started yet? I want to pledge $1,000 to it. And I'm like, that's way above the top tier. And they wanted to do it just because they felt connected to me. So I think that's a really important thing that I could tell people. But not to do it in a way where you're doing it purely to get something from someone. Do it because you want to help them. I think people can see very easily if you're doing something purely to get something out of them.
There's people really can notice integrity when you have it, and also when you don't have it. And you do see people that are out there just to make money, and usually it's pretty obvious when you see that.
There's a certain there's a certain air about it that you go, this guy isn't really that genuine. Like, I don't really want to support whatever this is.
Let's talk a little bit more about the development of the Nomad. Like, how does that actually happen? Because I mean, you're a concept artist, illustrator. Have no experience, as far as I know, in production, overseas shipping, importing stuff, distribution, all that stuff. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to handle. And
it is.
I don't even I mean, where do you even begin with all that?
Yeah, well, if I knew how much work it was actually going to be beforehand, I might not have done it. It's one of those. It's one of those things. I think there's that truism where, you know, ready, fire, aim. It's like you start doing it before you actually know all the different steps that you need to do, and you kind of logically figure those steps out along the way. Yeah. And I thought, well, you know, I can at least take the very first step into doing this stuff. I'm a concept artist, so I've always, you know, come up with concepts for, you know, non-physical things like video games and that. And I thought, how hard could it be, you know, just to bring it to the physical world? And to be perfectly honest, it's not really that tough. Yeah. It's just being clear with what you're trying to achieve with your designs, and having good communication skills to push back and forward between yourselves and the manufacturer, in order to get to the place where you want to be, where you want your product to be. But the first step I did was, you know, we both read Tim Ferriss's book before, and I used that book to kind of look for resources on manufacturers. And I went to Alibaba.com, I think it is, and just started researching different bag manufacturers, and just going, they look okay. I'll get in contact with them and see if they're interested in producing, you know, a prototype or a sample, as they call it. And what I found was that there is a massive spread of quality. You know, there are literally thousands of bag manufacturers in China, which is where I'm getting it produced. And getting a good one can be sometimes a bit of a crapshoot. Like you're going, and half of them actually don't even produce their own stuff. They get the contracts and then they outsource it to an even cheaper company, and you don't know, and there's no quality control and stuff like that. But I didn't know any of this starting up, so I just sent it off to a manufacturer that seemed to be okay. They responded relatively quickly, and I got a sample back relatively within a couple of months or so. And it was just terrible. It was horrible. I almost quit then, and this is terrible. This is so not what I was imagining at all. And their communication was terrible, so I dropped them and went to someone else. Again, pretty much just using the same thing. Oh, well, they communicated okay with me. Let's jump on board with these guys. And it wasn't until getting to about the third manufacturer that I actually did it properly, where it's like, well, I had to hire a manufacturing consultant over here in Australia who had you know, years of experience in manufacturing over there in China, and they weren't cheap. They were really expensive. But they did so much due diligence that you simply cannot do it on the internet. You know, you have to speak the language. You have to physically go down to the shop floor and make sure that they're doing everything properly. You have to get engineers to check, you know, their accreditations, their licenses, whether they're legally there, and also check things like what sort of environmental responsibility they had, and whether the workers were treated well, that kind of thing. And that takes a lot of time and effort, you know. So that was doing it right, and that's one of the things that I had to learn over time. It's like, it's just one of those things. Should we wrap up?
We should probably restart everything.
Okay, cool. We found the better manufacturers. That manufacturing side started to go pretty well. And then, because I was putting the product out there, a lot of really good ideas came back from the actual community who saw it. And one of the ideas was, hey, you know, it'd be really cool if the Nomad attached to a tripod. And I thought, that's a fantastic idea. You know, how much could that be? And I thought, it's just going to be a piece of plastic with a little screw hole that'll attach to any commercially available tripod. And I thought it'd be really cheap to do that, and it turned out to be the single most expensive thing to happen. And if I'd known that up front, I would have thought, maybe not. But when I thought, okay, what do I need to do to get this specialized plate made? And I got in touch with D+I, who is one of the biggest industrial design companies in Australia, and they helped me with creating a physical prototype of
Yeah.
just the plate itself, and that cost probably around $3,000.
Hey.
Yeah, just for a piece of plastic plate.
Jeez.
And I didn't have the funds to do many different prototypes.
Yeah.
And they've never worked on such a small project before.
Oh.
They were like, yeah, this is like the smallest project we've ever worked on.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I thought, oh God.
Yeah.
So they said, you're basically going for a hole-in-one. You get
Yeah.
a perfect design that first time. And they said,
Wow.
that doesn't really happen very often.
Nah.
Like, never.
Right.
But it worked,
Oh,
it
wow.
worked that first time. I remember just, I slipped in the plate and it felt so good. I was like, oh my God, I think I sweared.
Yeah.
In this professional boardroom. Like, it just feels so good.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that was a huge part of the development.
Yeah.
And also just the testing and feedback. I have a lot of friends who are artists, who I got them to test it and
Yeah.
figure out, does it feel good? Does it feel good? Does it feel nice when you're using it?
Yeah.
And you tested it out the last time
Oh, yeah.
that you came. That we went to the museum. And
It's awesome.
yeah,
First time I used it, I was like, wow, this works
Yeah.
even better than I was hoping for.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just works,
Yeah.
and it just hits that sweet spot
Yeah.
that you're not forcing anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I realize how rarely that occurs.
Oh yeah.
That I think, wow, this is kind of like
Yeah.
divine intervention.
Yeah,
kind
it
of
feels
thing.
like it feels so right. I think
Yeah.
like the first time people actually use one,
Yeah.
it'll really convince them about it.
Yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
There's something about like seeing it being
Yeah.
used. It's like all right, it's a bag, and apparently you can sketch on it.
Yeah,
But the first time you actually like stand there
Yeah.
and draw,
Yeah.
it's like wow, this is awesome.
this is actually pretty cool. Yeah.
And like seeing how easy it is to like keep all your supplies in there, nicely organized. Nothing's like falling out. and,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
dumping everywhere.
Yeah.
It's,
Now-
it's a really nice system.
I think it's a really cool thing that just about everyone that I've gotten their opinion on trying it out, they've been convinced enough to go, I'm throwing money at this, like without hesitation.
Yeah.
When the Kickstarter started, and I thought, wow, that's a huge, vote of confidence from someone who's actually physically held it.
Yeah.
And I think pretty much everyone that's held it has gone, wow, it's really good quality.
Yeah.
And that's blown me away because I'm this close to the project.
Right.
I can't tell
Oh, yeah.
anymore. So I really have to get those outside views to help me out.
Yeah.
So from there, I've also had to talk with. So one of the biggest areas that Kickstarter projects tend to fail in is shipping the products on time, because logistics is a very
Oh yeah.
it spirals out of control. If you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of backers, that becomes a logistical nightmare.
Oh god, yeah.
There's just hundreds, if not thousands, of addresses you have to check, because by the time you finish your funding and when you ship, there's this huge lag period in a lot of cases, and by the time you're ready to ship, at least 10% of those people that have given you their addresses have moved. Right, so it's not even something that I thought about until I started doing research.
Geez. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about
Yeah,
that.
and so I use this company called Swish, and they're fantastic to do the fulfillment. So basically, I ship all the products to them, and they ship it out to all these people. I basically give them a list, and they just work through the list. They got all the emails, so they check a day before they send out, or a day or two before they send out. They emailed everyone and go, "What's your address?"
Right.
We just want to confirm.
Yeah.
And that reduces
Oh,
the
wow. That's
likelihood.
great.
Yeah, and I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Hands off.
That's a great thing not to have to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I design stuff. I'm not super well versed with
Right.
shipping stuff out.
Yeah.
So I thought, and that's one of the things that I think is I've been pretty good with. It's I know my strengths, and I try to surround that. I try to plug at least my knowledge gaps with other professionals in other areas. I mean, I personally don't think you can be 100% at every single thing.
No.
I'm not sure whether you found that.
I mean,
yourself.
I definitely agree. Like the first round of art camp, it was all me. It was all just like Noah working his butt off to like make this thing happen.
Yeah.
And so like admittedly, like it was a little bit ghetto from time to time. Like sometimes things didn't work quite right. It relied on me checking my email all the time, responding to all these things personally, and
yeah.
so it was a huge mess. But like it proved that this it proved that the idea was good.
Yep.
And so at this point, now I'm looking at like, all right, how do I take what I do best, which I think most of what I do best is come up with the demos, the teaching material, and put that out there. How do I focus most of my time on that?
Yeah.
And then find other people who love doing the other stuff to help me out with that.
Yeah.
So, I've got a guy that's going to be handling all the technical side, customer support side, all that sort of stuff. So all of a sudden now we've got a dedicated guy just for that. And I've got some professionals that I'm talking to right now and settling details with that are going to be coming on for critiques all the time. Because that was one of the things people wanted a lot more of from the first time. So the second time we'll be having like tons more critiques.
Yeah.
And as much as I like doing critiques, I'm more interested in doing the demos and more interested in
it's more fun,
that teaching stuff. It's more fun for me. And so I'll be bringing on these other professionals that really want to like help students work with them and teach them things. And so I think that'll be really good. And of course, getting a lot more people to do demos as well. That's something I did the first year, and it was a huge success. Because it's a lot of fun. Really, everyone kind of wins with it. I get the joy of hiring my friends and like coworkers and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
They get the fun of being pretty well paid to basically produce portfolio work, because I don't really set a lot of requirements for this sort of work. I really just want them to produce work that they love. So they tend to do really good stuff for me. And then, of course, the students are extremely excited, because it's not even necessarily one of the main things about Art Camp, but all of a sudden they've got access to, I think the summer one had like 20 hours worth of demos or something ridiculous like that. And so they're getting like all this extra content from like some really world-class artists.
Absolutely.
So it really works out for everyone, and it makes me super happy. I love doing this, and it's nice to see all this more educational material being produced and put out there for all these artists at a pretty decent price. I think it's fairly affordable.
It definitely is. I mean, for me anyway, it seems like quite a very affordable way of accessing those high level artists. I mean, for myself, I mean, just putting out figures. When I was teaching privately, I can't do that anymore just because I don't lack of time. But I tell people, sign up for this thing because it's really good value for money. As a point of reference, I was charging over $100 an hour to privately teach people. So $250 for how long? It's like 12 weeks. I'm like, man, it's really good.
I mean, you're not getting the one-on-one instruction, which
absolutely.
I mean, one-on-one instruction has tons of value, and I recommend it. There's some resources I'll be putting on the website just for that, for people who want that. But for general teaching, like, you can teach a lot of this stuff to yourself and do it on your own time. Like, there's stuff you can definitely do without like a teacher standing behind your back.
And I think that has the added benefit of getting people to exercise their initiative.
Right.
Which, in my opinion, it's like one of the most important things that you have to do. Like, be a self-starter as an artist, because, well, this is probably be for another program, but the old ways of doing things are crumbling very quickly. In my opinion, and you really have to have that initiative muscle finely tuned to go out there and carve your own thing.
A lot of people expect all this stuff to be handed to them on a silver platter, and they just, here's your art career. But that's really not how it tends to work.
No,
so
absolutely.
I think even encouraging people to have that attitude during their education is really valuable.
Cool.
So cool. I think to sort of bring us somewhat to a close, let's take a few questions that we got online that I think tie into what we've been talking about.
Yeah, sure.
One that I think is really good and interesting to think about is, what would you do differently if you could go back? And since we've sort of been talking about our personal projects here, let's just go ahead and focus on that rather than our careers as a whole.
Okay. Yeah,
so
sure.
like, if you had to go back to day one of Nomad, what would you do differently?
I'll definitely, if I knew what I knew now, I would definitely get in touch with the consultants. Sorry. I would have gotten in touch with the consultants a lot earlier. And seek their advice a lot more, because
I mean, that's probably would have shaved months off your development.
It would have shaved probably 6 months off.
Wow.
Yeah, they a lot of the time with the first developer, it felt like they were dragging their heels all the time, it would have saved a lot of time, basically. And that was the main savings that I think I would have got. I don't think I could have saved money that much more. Like all the fees that I paid, they're pretty standard. But creating all the prototypes, it hasn't actually been all that expensive. I mean, for each of the the prototypes, there'll be anywhere from $250 to $300. It's not crazy. Unless you're talking like molded things that need tooling, and that those things tend to be very expensive very quickly. But with a bag, it's soft material. It's cut out of templates and that sort of thing. It's relatively cheap. So
which is surprising to hear and kind of nice. It's a little more accessible than.
It definitely makes it a lot more accessible for people. So if anyone's thinking about doing that sort of stuff, I'd say just give it a go. But I'd also say make sure you're well funded. I think I've mentioned online quite a few times that in order to get to the stage where I could kickstart, a lot of the fees have added up to around $15,000, which, although it's not crazy, it's still a chunk of change. And the other thing as well is that a lot of I've done a lot of things myself. So if you don't have a spread of skills, like for instance, all the video editing was done by me, all the filming was done by me, which would have shaved off a few $1,000s
easy
at least. And I think that I used to think that not having a good quality video was fine, but I think having a good quality video definitely instills confidence in people that you know what you're doing. So it's something to definitely budget for if you're looking to do any of this.
I think that's a good thing. Looking back at my experience for Art Camp, it's interesting to think about what I would do differently. Because admittedly, like when I came up with the idea, I had the idea that this program would have 25 people in it. That was sort of that number, like magically in my head. And of course now I've ended up with hundreds of people.
So the system that you would have been using probably wasn't looked to scale that.
I was never anticipating scale like I've got. And for the most part, things scaled well. Since everything was so self-directed, that part scaled fairly well. The only thing that didn't scale too well was the community aspect. Although the community seemed to develop pretty well on its own. I ran it all through Facebook, and the Facebook group functionality is not good enough to manage a group of that size. At least not well. And so that's something I realized fairly quickly. I was like, all right, this isn't quite what I had in mind. It's not quite as well organized and nice to use as I'd really like to.
So are you developing something of your own?
Yes. So this coming semester, whatever you want to call it, I've developed my own like forum system that I'll be running the whole system on, and it's way nicer. It's a lot easier. It's prettier. It's so much better. The registration is like a lot easier. Like, I mean, the old system was basically I had a PayPal button that would PayPal me money, and then I would like manually add people to a mailing list and manually add people to a Facebook group, which is fine for 25 people. It's easy, but like hundreds of people, it's horrible.
That's similar to because I started using. I'm not sure what you use, but I use MailChimp. And I had an automatic sign up, and it would just collate everything together. And I just realized that after people started adding their names to it, how much of a administrative nightmare that would have been if I hadn't done something automated like that.
It's the fact that I did it like by hand originally just
blows my mind.
It was a horrible idea. It worked, but man.
But it's one of those things. It's like it's almost a good problem to have because it far outstrips your expectation of what you think. So it's like, well, I think it's very easy that for some people, I mean, I'm quite detail oriented, and maybe in a previous life, I would have been spinning my wheels, making sure all of that infrastructure was there for a large thing, and not concentrating on the things like actually promoting it. And then you wouldn't even need that.
Exactly.
You know? So
a lot of people do develop something for scale that never actually ends up needing this.
So I think if you had to really do it one way. And the other thing is, well, if you develop all that takes extra time
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, it takes longer for you to get your idea
Yep.
into motion. And quite often, I've found myself that if you lose that momentum, it's really tough to get back.
Oh, it's awful.
So it's like he's having to push things uphill again from start.
So yeah, in hindsight, I'm like glad I did it the way I did it, but also I kind of wish I had done it a little bit smarter.
Yeah,
it would have been nice to put a little bit of time into automating things, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
So another question that people tend to ask is, do you ever still get scared?
Yeah, all the time. All the time, like.
Aw, that's adorable.
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Like, I just remember pressing the launch button, and my hands were all sweaty.
Yeah.
Because that was like the moment of truth.
Right.
And even before that, I suppose at the back of your mind as a freelancer, you're always thinking, what happens if work dries up one day? There's plenty of times that I'm always still scared, but it's not enough to stop me from going forward.
Right.
I think especially if you've been in the field for a little while, you start dealing with that stress, and you have your own ways of dealing with it. I'm sure you have your own ways of dealing with it. I have my own ways of dealing with it. And I suppose spreading my net a little bit more, branching off into different creative fields, so that if, say, one area kind of collapses, there's another to take the slack up. That's been risk mitigation for me. And it falls in line with my thinking of how the industry will kind of go in the future. We won't get into that now, but there are plenty of times when you have no certainty of things going well, but you push ahead anyway, and just see things through. I think it'd be horrible if you kind of got up to 90% of the journey, and then you were too afraid that it was going to fail, and you just don't push the button. I think that'd be a horrible waste. So,
I mean, I'm the same way. I'm terrified all the time, and I mean, I'm still scared. Like, Art Camp was a huge success, and I'm still terrified that Art Camp 2 will just fail. I'm terrified that no one's going to sign up, and I know that's probably stupid. Because I mean, people were so happy with the first one that they probably sign up for another one. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm still afraid that they won't. I'm still afraid that they're not going to be happy with it. That there's
always at the back of your mind, you think that was a fluke.
This is just going to go terribly. So I still have those fears, and when I was freelancing more, I was always afraid that freelancing was going to dry up, and I was going to be unemployed forever.
If you what's your advice to someone who feels very fearful like that, and they kind of just stood still? What would your advice be?
Well, see, that's the thing, is I think you sort of have to get comfortable with it, and you have to learn how to either use it for motivation or just kind of live with it. Because I don't think I don't personally know any artists that are completely free of that fear, that are completely confident, everything's going to be
who are also sane.
Right. Exactly. So I think most of us are fairly scared, whether we hide it or not, I don't know, but
I think what you were saying was it can lead to you acting in productive ways or non-productive ways. Right. And I think that's a big decider between whether someone makes it or someone doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. So. Yeah, it's probably a good point to end on. Yeah, sure. So this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully we're going to be doing a lot more of this.
Yeah, absolutely. For the people that don't know, don't follow on the forums or Facebook, we're looking at doing this on a semi-regular sort of basis. And we thought, well, we'll just concentrate on the Kickstarter stuff today, but maybe in a few weeks' time we've collated some of your questions. And we'll definitely be going through them a little bit more. This is going to be a bit of a lifestyle kind of thing. So I think the next one will be probably at Noah's new pad. Congratulations on getting that as well.
That was easy.
Yeah, cool. So your art camp is coming up soon as well. Do you want to tell people about
sign-ups go up, I think it's April 29th, and then we're going to be starting at the end of May. So you can find out more, of course, on Facebook or whatever, but if you go to noahbradley.com/artcamp, I'll be putting up the new website for that come April 29th. And so you can find out more and sign up for that then. It'll be 12 weeks of more fundamental exercises, totally brand new content, new community site, new demos from guest artists. I'll have a staff of professional artists helping with critiques every week. It should be a really awesome program. So hopefully you'll check that out and sign up. So Darren, how do people find out about the Nomad?
Yeah, with the Nomad, the Kickstarter is still running. So if you want to find it, just go to kickstarter.com and just search for Nomad Art Satchel, and it should be pretty easy to find. So yeah, if you think it's a great product, feel free to support it. That'd be fantastic if you could. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch you guys in a few weeks.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
No worries. Yeah.